to the all-new adventures of the Doctor Who Book Club podcast. This is Matt in Minnesota.
And Chris in South London.
Chris, hello. How's it going?
Life is well. Here in the Northern Hemisphere, it's getting colder. Times are good.
The weather kind of calls for a nice circumnavigating trip around the globe, I think, to to a tropical destination.
Yes, let's all go to the Southern Hemisphere. More on that later.
Yes. Do you have something for show and tell this month?
I do. And actually, we'll be staying in the Southern Hemisphere. I recently discovered a brand new podcast called Doctor Who and the Episodes of Death, which is a podcast run by an Aussie couple, and they talk about Doctor Who episodes or stories that fan wisdom is not kind to, and they have a kind of a different guest on for each episode. And for the first episode, they've done Terror of the Vervoids. Because they thought they would do one of the least popular stories, one of the least popular Doctors, and one of the least popular seasons. And it's kind of a spin-off of the excellent Australian podcast Splendid Chaps that I don't think really kind of got that much attention, certainly in the Northern Hemisphere. But in the 50th anniversary year, there was an episode every month about the different Doctors. And it was kind of done in front of a live audience in Melbourne. And this kind of like the term Splendid Chaps is a reference to the Brigadier's line in, is it the Five Doctors, where it says Splendid Chaps, all of them? They are brilliant shows. And so they every now and again have sort of like extra episodes, like they've recently done one about the Sarah Jane Adventures. When I say recently, they did it in May. And they occasionally have Tansy from the Verities as a guest. My show and tell is kind of like Splendid Chaps and its spin-offs, because I don't think that they've kind of got enough attention. Certainly, I've rarely heard other podcasts mentioning them, which is when you'll probably say, "Oh yes, I knew about them since in the anniversary year, and everybody was talking about them, Chris." It's wonderful stuff and very funny. Yeah, it's slightly irreverent, kind of. So it's good.
Thank you. It's good. Keep warm. Yes.
Indeed. You know it. Okay.
I know it very well. Yes.
Brilliant.
As you surmised, I listened to it throughout the 50th year, and it wasn't quite Kickstarter. I think it might have been like an Indiegogo campaign, but they did a fundraiser. So I have a Splendid Chaps T-shirt, which I often wear to conventions here stateside. So it's a great podcast, and the group behind it, they also did a Australian TV series which was based on a LGBT science fiction club that lasted for one season.
Okay.
Doctor Who is featured prominently.
Well, they did a radio series called Night Terrors.
And Jane Badler guest starred in that from V, I remember.
Yes. I am a friend of Ben from Splendid Chaps. But I have never met the man. Nor have I actually ever physically met the friend who we share a friend with.
So it was an ABC One television series called Outland.
Okay.
And it lasted for a season. But yeah, Splendid Chaps is a great show, and as is, like you mentioned, Night Terrors, the kind of comedic...
You can tell that they love Doctor Who.
A few of the hosts guest starred on... There was an after show that aired after every episode of Series 10 in Australia called The Whovians. And I think they guest starred on that series as well. Yes,
yeah. It was, I have some friends in Australia media circles who have told me that the job they had in mind for me has been taken. I thought there is no way that I'm going to move to Australia and present a prime time-ish program about Doctor Who.
So my show and tell for this month, a collection of Time Lord verse. It's the Now We Are 600 book by James Goss, illustrated by Russell T. Davies. It's just a really delightful short. It's only like 100 pages or so, but it's lavishly illustrated by RTD. It's got pictures on every page, and it's just a fun collection of poems. It's based on Now We Are 6 by A.A. Milne, creator of Winnie the Pooh. Now We Are Six isn't as well known in the States, so every poem it'll say like in the style of, and it'll reference, what poem it's kind of an adaptation of.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful little book, and I recommend it. So that's my show and tell.
It's certainly, it's created quite a buzz over here in fandom circles. Because there was a signing at one of the major bookstores in London. Alas, on my wedding anniversary, so I kind of thought I'd probably not likely be able to go, so I didn't want to try to get a ticket. I gather as well that it kind of featured a picture of a female Doctor.
Yes.
Yeah, but obviously RTD probably had an inkling. I mean, maybe it's not quite so obvious from it that it's Jodie Whittaker.
Looks kind of like her. It's.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Not enough to where someone who got an advance copy would be able to say, I know who's playing the Doctor, but yeah. You can kind of tell that he may have had a heads up as to who was cast, which is kind of cool. Yeah, I guess he's done a lot of interviews and podcasts in the last month or so related to this, so he's been in the news again a few different times.
Yeah.
I would imagine, Stephen Moffat would take some time away, but it'd be nice if maybe after the Chibnall era is over, that, if Moffat came back with something similar. I think it's one of those things where the current showrunner really stays in the background when the next showrunner comes along, and then maybe steps out of the shadows later on, perhaps. Or maybe I'm just reading into it way too much.
Well, I mean, I think it's a sensible thing to do. To kind of, to sort of step back and stuff. I mean, unless your successor's doing a particularly terrible job, but and I'm sure that Chibnall won't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Moffat's a very busy fella anyway. He's got, I'm sure, plenty of other things that he'll be kind of doing. Maybe a fifth season of Sherlock. Who knows?
It would be nice if he did a follow-up to the Tintin movie. I don't know if they're ever going to do that again, but that'd be fun.
Yeah, I think the moment might have passed, but yeah. Yes.
Cool.
Right.
So this month we're reading Eye of Heaven by Jim Mortimore.
Yeah. And speaking of Tintin, this is kind of, because like Tintin used to have globe-trotting adventures, and this is a bit of a globe-trotting adventure. So Jim Mortimore. So he started out in the New Adventures. He co-wrote with Andy Lane Lucifer Rising, if I remember correctly. And he tends to do sort of books with, shall we say, quite a bit of death in them, and also books that are sort of tend to be fairly intense as well. We shall see whether that's the case with this one. And he also kind of abruptly stopped the BBC books with a little bit of a kind of a falling out on editorial interference, from what I understand, and published. I think it's Campaign, isn't it? His kind of missing First Doctor novel. Mm-hmm. So, which I've never read, but because I understand, did he want to write it in the form of like a poem?
Yeah,
or something like that. Yeah, I
have it sitting on my shelf, but I've never read it either. Yeah, I'm not sure whether it's how it's written, but so was Eye of Heaven? Was this the last novel he wrote? Because I know he's written a couple of times for some of the Big Finish short story collections. But I'm wondering if he wrote anything after this one or not.
So he wrote Bell Tempest in the Eighth Doctor range, which might have been published after this. And I am struggling to think of any other books that he bowed out of the BBC range relatively early. And I don't recall him writing any other Eighth Doctor novels. He did write, was it The Natural History of Fear, I think, for the audios for the Eighth Doctor.
He's done a lot of sound design and music composition for Big Finish too, I think.
Yeah, well, he was a DJ.
Oh.
So apparently sort of relatively well known in the Bristol kind of club scene of the 90s. A very interesting chap, because I mean he kind of he in some ways, sort of at a time when Doctor Who was regarded as being very geeky, I always thought it was quite cool that we had this guy who was basically a club DJ who in his spare time would trot out often these very dark Doctor Who novel.
People could make that mistake of John Peel, but they're two separate people.
Yes, they are. Yes. One of them was a far better writer than the other. Alas, the better writer didn't write for Doctor Who.
Let's talk a little bit about the setting and structure.
The structure,
yeah.
Yes.
So this is one of the earlier past Doctor adventures. It features the fourth Doctor and Leela, as we talked about, and it's set between the Talons of Wang Chiang and the Horror of Fang Rock. So this would be brown-eyed and not blue-eyed Leela.
Yes. You said about structure. Probably fair to say that this book is not exactly structured in a linear way. To an extent that I have done my notes in a spreadsheet. So you kind of keep track of everything.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Sometimes I wonder if we really need to go into the chapter and organizational structure for every book, but then we get to a novel like this, and I kind of think like, you know, it's pretty cool that we take a moment to do that, because here it's essential.
Yeah.
This book is told in 2 parts, and it's a non-linear story structure, and every chapter is told in first person with shifting narrators for each chapter. Most of the chapters are going to be from Leela's point of view. And you could almost think of this as 2 coins and 2 sides of a coin, one for part 1 and one for part 2, and each chapter kind of flips back and forth between the 2. The even number chapters kind of all flow together, and then the odd number chapters flow together. And then
mostly,
yeah, mostly. Yeah, there's one chapter where it's a little confusing.
Yes. All right. Okay.
So
with all of those health warnings, shall we begin?
We start with a prologue, which is set on Easter Island in October of 1842, and so the prologue is 30 years in the past from where the main story takes place, which is in 1872, and then the epilogue is 30 years on from that in 1902. So it's from this prologue is from the perspective of Horace Stockwood, who's at the time he's writing the prologue, he's a younger man who had traveled to Easter Island with Alex Richards, who was his kind of lifelong friend, and they are on the island and meet the native people on the island and kind of befriend them, and they end up stealing part of the Rongo Rongo. It's a wooden tablet. The back of the novel gets that wrong. They call it a stone tablet, but it's a wooden tablet with inscriptions on it, which they steal, and as they're kind of making their way back to the ship, the natives on the island discover that the Rongo Rongo is missing and start coming after them. He's
managed to kind of somehow get free. He's sort of, but he stumbles across a ritual where, because they have like a local guide called Totoro, and they see him being kind of like sort of sacrificed / punished, and then sort of he sees his mate Alex being brought out, and basically the narrator now kind of runs and sort of finds his way out into the sea and sort of gets onto the boat, but the natives are still kind of pursuing him by boat. But you can see that all along the island, the Maui, which is the kind of the statues from Easter Island, seem to be watching and sort of almost look as if they've been moving, a little bit like the Ogre from Stones of Blood, of which more later. Yeah, so we are off to, I think it's fair to say, a fairly vivid start to proceedings.
So now, are we going to go chapter by chapter? Do you want to do it that way, or? I
think that's probably the best way. I think, because I don't know. I can sort these things so that we can kind of go in chronological order. But I mean, there are some times where kind of people are introduced in chapters. They're introduced to the reader, but obviously the narrator has known them from earlier scenes and such like. I think sometimes you have to give the flavour of what it's actually like to read the book. So I don't know. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think going chapter by chapter is fine. I think I might just say that The odd number chapters are later on in the journey.
Yeah.
The even numbered ones start in London, and they really concern like funding an expedition, back to Easter Island. And then the odd numbered chapters kind of describe the journey from Portsmouth to Easter Island. And they go the long way around, so there's no Panama Canal yet or anything. So
no.
And they're not even going around the Cape of South America.
How do they go around? They do a kind of like a slingshot around Australia. But yes, I can't quite remember the exact bits of the route, but it's a long way. But also, I think it's probably fair to say that if and we're kind of skipping ahead here a little bit, but this is a non-linear book, so hey, I do think that certainly the structure helps this bit of the book, because if you just had a lot of stuff about sort of like the sea journey on its own, I don't know necessarily whether it'd be quite as gripping, but we'll come to that later.
So chapter 1 is it starts with Leela's point of view, so we've shifted perspective, and it's fair to say we're inside Leela's head for much of this book.
Yes.
There's a couple of chapters that shift point of view to narrators that we don't usually see. We'll get to that in a moment, but it starts with Leela catching flying fish on the Tweed, which is a boat that the Doctor has purchased. And when we say purchased, he didn't charter the boat; he bought it outright with a sack of gold coins.
Yes,
probably from the TARDIS.
Oh no, we find out about those gold coins later. But, yes, but yeah. So Leela's catching flying fish, and we meet a James Royston, who gives Leela a metal ball that apparently someone tried to kill her with before the journey started. She kind of goes off on one sort of saying that she feels as if because the metal had been inside her, that it knows her. So we have a lot of her, as you were saying, a lot of from her viewpoint, sort of particularly her beliefs. Sort of beliefs is very much like and sort of like people's personal religions are very much like a theme in this novel. It's very much a novel with themes, I would say. And we also encounter Horace Stockwood again, so the gentleman from the prologue, who, fair to say, has a bit of an avuncular relationship to Leela. And sort of like Leela refers to him as her best friend. And you're like, oh, okay, well, this is a bit strange. And Leela's also measuring time in terms of 9 days instead of weeks, which I don't know whether that was something from Face of Evil. And she also makes reference to the land of Eng instead of England. And she describes the boat as being a village. Her prose is quite characterful. But one thing I'm wondering is, when is Leela writing this? Is it when she's on Gallifrey?
I didn't take it so much as people actually writing this down, like as log entries, because there's just too many details, and it's really just, to me, it's like first person. It's not first person omniscient, but it's I think the references to 9 days, I think that helped. At least it helped me as the POV kept shifting between characters each chapter. It helped me kind of quickly say, okay, we're back in Leela's head now, because we're talking about weird descriptions for everything.
Yes, if it gets odd, it's Leela. Yeah. Apart from, she has spot-on descriptions for the various ship terms, so she knows where the forecastle is and various other things. Like, wow, okay, she studied nautical terminology. She just gets confused by horses and the like. Again, of which more later. So, and we now switch on to chapter 2. It's London, and so we see Horace Stockwood in his home, and he's basically recapping to the Doctor and Leela the prologue. One thing that we never quite learn is how the Doctor finds out about Horace Stockwood.
I think he was answering a advertisement in the paper. Like Horace had placed like an ad saying he was looking for someone to fund the expedition, because he really wants to get back there to really put closure, I think, around the events that had happened and find some answers, because he's been ostracized by the scientific community for claiming that, stones were moving and everything.
Yeah, so maybe that's why the Doctor's intrigued. Yeah, no, that's true. So, and so this is from Leela's point of view. So we get all manner of kind of odd stuff here. So you get newspaper print, which he thinks of as does kind of holy writing, and there's a kind of a wonderful bit where she's told to sit on the sofa, and so she doesn't know what it is, and so she says it would be disrespectful to do this in Horace's temple, because she thinks of it as a temple rather than a house.
And at this point, I have to just say that the characterization of Leela, especially in this part of I was going to say these early chapters, but I guess in these even-numbered chapters, it's slightly problematic for me from a chronological perspective, because would she really not recognize the concept of houses in London? Because she knows what a hut is, she knows what a village is. It would seem to me like her reactions would have made more sense had she not already spent some time in London, because this takes place after Talons, which is 17 years in the future from the events of most of this book. And she's already been aboard the Sandcrawler in Robots of Death. I feel like this should take place like right after Face It in terms of how new and fresh her reactions are to everything.
Yeah, because there's no real reason why it shouldn't. Because there is a reference to Talons, but it's fairly slight. Mm-hmm. There's also a line in this bit where she says that she's a hunter and that she chooses a mate in her own time. And apparently that is supposed to explain why in Invasion of Time she kind of like falls in love so quickly with Andred or whatever his name is. Go figure. So one of the worst exits of a companion ever. And the Doctor sort of thinks that Stockwood is being kind of tortured by his past, and there's a brilliant line which says that the hunters are memories and we're here to rescue him. That there are some really wonderful kind of sort of phrases here that could almost be kind of like quotes in their own right. Yeah, so Stockwood's kind of, as you say, trying to raise money for an expedition, and so the Doctor gives him a kind of like a diamond to finance it, and yeah, I wonder whether it's a metabolist crystal. Is it something that, or metabolus? It's something that he's got kind of kicking around in the TARDIS. So, and he seems to have a few of them because they pop up later in the book as well. I was like, I don't remember the Doctor giving out gemstones to everyone. And it also seems that somebody's tried to break in to steal the tablet, and Stockwood reckons they might have been let in by his servant because he knows that he can't afford kind of like proper salaries. The Doctor kind of goes off to a pawnbroker to kind of go and get rid of the diamond or crystal and kind of get some cash.
And that's where he gets his gold coins. Okay.
Yeah.
The next chapter is again in Leela's point of view.
Yeah.
Another 27 days have passed on the ship.
And the Doctor's taught all of the sailors Octopus's Garden and various other Beatles songs. Mm-hmm. Which is lovely. And the great thing is, of course, Leela has no idea why they're singing about meter maids and stuff like that, and she just kind of does it, and they're kind of, well, this is something that's going on. The Doctor also gets her to kind of wash, telling her that about the ritual of Carbolic, and that Carbolic is the saint of hunters.
And we learn that Leela likes to spend her spare time down in the hold with the pigs. I don't want to say wallowing around down there, but there's a lot of smell descriptions in this book. And
she's a hunter, right?
Yeah.
So she's kind of, it's stuff that she would notice.
Mm-hmm. There's a cool scene where the Doctor builds a bread oven for the ship out of spare parts. It's kind of a way to ingratiate himself with the crew a little bit more. And
also there's an implication here that Leela and the Doctor had been imprisoned on the boat and they've recently been released. Starting to get the sense that there's been some bad stuff going down. And there's also a lovely line, because she encounters kind of like the cook, who's kind of a friend, and the cook came from a place called Glasgow and apparently saw no reason to make an effort to be understood when he spoke.
We get a lot of dialogue written in particular accents in this.
Yeah, we do. And it's written regardless of who's narrating it in the accent, which again I found slightly odd, because I could understand with some of the narrators to come, but like for Leela, I kind of like, no, I don't think Leela would write phonetically. Mm-hmm. But yeah, hey. There's a crucial plot point in amongst all of this, is that she overhears Royston talking to a woman called Richards, who she wants to kill for some as yet unspecified reason. And Royston is Stockwood's oldest friend, so Leela's confused as to really what's going on. And Richards is insisting that if Royston wants her help, he has to denounce his friendship.
Royston's really one of the only... He's a scientist, he has some medical training, and he's really one of the only people that... I don't know if he totally believes what Stockwood has told him, all these years, but he's certainly sympathetic to him and is along for the adventure, and he's older as well. I think they're both in their 50s or 60s at this point.
Yeah, that would make sense. Yeah, and then the chapter ends with Leela deciding to do a ritual of carbolic on the quarterdeck in front of all of the sailors. That's Leela for you. We're back in London, so kind of Leela and Stockwood are hanging out, and she thinks that he makes all his own shelves. So you get a lovely bit of domestic stuff here. It's very reminiscent of Talon's, because she thinks that blue cheese could kill her, and she tries something called chocolate surprise, which is too rich for her and makes her kind of like retch. When we wander off into London, and there's quite a bit of scenes of her just making odd observations. Yeah, specifically they go to the graveyard where Stockwood lays flowers on Alexander's grave.
Which is an empty tomb because the body was never recovered from the island.
Yes, yeah, and this confuses her because she wonders why Stockwood needs to pretend that he's in the graveyard, and also she wonders why no one has eaten the dead, because the 17 apparently eat the corpses of their loved ones.
Yeah, we learn Leela and others are cannibals, which
yes.
was I never knew that. Yeah, we learned quite a bit about Leela's background, that she had an older sister that died before she was born, and
in some ways this is always face of evil too, because there are certainly quite a few bits where you're going to go, that's not been mentioned before or since. So Stockwood sort of asks about why Leela and Doctor want to help him. And she never really answers that because she just kind of gets distracted with kind of weird London stuff. And when they go home for tea, they discover there's been a break-in. And it's okay because the Doctor's there. And it was Stockwood's butler trying to steal from him. And the Doctor fired him. Which when I first read it, I go, oh well, that sounds very sinister. Because the Fourth Doctor, he does sometimes get a bit violent, particularly kind of in the early years of the Fourth Doctor. And so the Doctor says they all need to head off down to Portsmouth to kind of catch a boat, and they will meet him in the George Hotel. And then kind of Royston rocks up, who is very leery towards Leela. And sort of when Leela tells Royston that she's Stockwood's best friend, he says, well, Horace, for a man who, roughly speaking, makes a friend every decade, your current choice seems about par for the course. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Royston's nice. But and also Leela would like to see the animal from which you make chocolate surprise, because to kill it would be a challenge.
Yeah. The Rongo Rongo wasn't stolen at this point, right? It was an attempted break-in. They still have possession of it, but that could change.
Yes.
So then we cut back to the Tweed, which is the boat that has been sailing for a long time. And I think the route they take is they go around the Cape. Is it Cape Horn in Africa? And they head across the Indian Ocean.
Yes, it must be.
Yeah, past Australia.
They do go past Australia. Aussie listeners... Australia doesn't actually appear in this book, but it just gets mentioned. So and also the captain tries to explain the concept of the globe to Leela, and she doesn't understand why maps are flat if the world's a globe. And the Doctor says he tried to get Columbus to make a map using an orange and a biro. So that's fun. But also there's a little bit of a kind of another plot point is that she stumbles across Royston and Richards emerging from a cabin with kind of carrying some blood-stained bandages and smelling of sickness. And so she's wondering what's going on in their cabin.
I did really like that moment about, trying to teach Leela how the world is round and not flat, and using the examples of the masts, on the curvature of the Earth. And that was kind of a cool moment to see or to read. So that brings us to our dramatic reading for the month, which is courtesy of myself. We'll have a listen. I closed and locked the TARDIS doors. The old thing sometimes gets nervous if I forget to secure the doors. I took several deep breaths just to prove the atmospheric monitoring subsystem wrong, and then in very short order wished I hadn't. I stopped breathing for a minute or two, long enough to analyze the rather pungent cocktail I had just inhaled. Fish, birds, oil, smoke, rotting vegetable matter, rotting animal matter, burning wood, hot pitch, manganese, rats, dogs. I concentrated. The fish were a day old. The birds were tern, recently arrived on their yearly migration. The oil needed changing. The smoke was derived from cannabis. The rotting vegetable matter was carrot. The animal matter was dead rat, being eaten by several more live rats. The pitch was cooling upon the hull of a nearby ship. The dog was old. A canny purebred turned to the wild, rather like myself, I fancied. And the burning wood was laced with human sweat, and with teak oil, normally used to seal the decking of a ship, all of which told me that somewhere nearby, a sailor had just thrown part of his lunch to a stray dog before grinding a strong toke out beneath his bare heel upon the deck of a ship recently arrived from the Indies, whose hull he was currently engaged in repairing. The manganese I had detected came, no doubt, from tiny nodules lodged within the damaged section of hull. The nodules definitely originated on the seabed and could only have been disturbed by a major storm. The fish go without saying, obviously, and the rats? Well, there are rats at docks in any century. Not all of them are animals. I compressed my sensory input to human normal. This is something I do from time to time, a little game which keeps me entertained and alert, and I stepped away from the TARDIS. The wooden dock creaked beneath my feet. Greasy water lapped at wooden supports. The sun was slipping away to westwards, leaving room in the sky for a wind. It was an interesting wind, the kind the French might refer to as tu, rather than veu. No familiar summer phantom this, but a stranger of a breeze, a zephyr born in exotic latitudes, perhaps the offspring of some frightened hurricane or tornado, a wind of frightening and compelling potential, and one worthy of respect. It was a wind that Columbus and Darwin and Phineas Fogg would have understood. I smiled up at it, and waggled my fingers through it, and twirled my scarf happily at the thought that such an apparent simple thing could provoke such wonder. "Oi!" The voice was rough, and it was punctured by a phlegmy tobacco-related cough. "What you doing here, then? Passengers ain't allowed here, are they?" I turned. The dock handler was short, thick-set, with a brow that commanded attention as much for its obvious temporal proximity to his simian ancestors as for the thick mop of ginger hair that covered it. He wore the usual clothes one might expect of a dock worker, rough, smelly, dark. He was walking towards me self-importantly, swaggering might be a better word. In one hand was a cargo manifest, in the other a hip flask from which I clearly detected the aroma of a rather dubious malt whiskey. I smiled. I was just admiring the wind. The man looked at me with an expression I had come to be quite familiar with in the last couple of centuries of dealing with humans. You can admire the boat from the other side of the harbor, or buy yourself a whiskey in the 3 Tons on the I Street. That sounds rather splendid. Tell me, do they serve ginger beer? Ginger? What's that, then? Some foreign muck, is it? I checked my watch. Ah yes, I was forgetting. It hasn't been discovered yet. The handler clearly lacked either the time or ability to be confused. Look, mate, it's easy. Move along or I'll dump you in the dock, and then you can move along. Only not so sweet-smelling if you take my meaning. Assuredly I do, Mr. Just do as you're told before Mr. Harper takes it out on both our hides with a whaling harpoon. And Mr. Harper? He would be the captain of this fine clipper here, the Tweed, would he? No, that'd be Captain Stewart. Mr. Harper is the harbor master. He's much worse, so do your best in getting along, like I said. I shall certainly take your advice. I started away from the dock handler with what I hoped he would consider a sprightly step. If you'd just be so kind as to direct me to his office? Actually, I didn't need to be directed. There was only one place the harbor master's office would be located in a port such as this. No, never mind, I added over the shoulder to the annoyed dock handler. I'll just follow the smell of corruption, shall I? So, as you could hear from that, the point of view shifts, so we're now inside the Doctor's head, and it has him leaving the TARDIS in Portsmouth Harbor. He took the TARDIS to get down there. This is interesting, I think, because we rarely, if ever, get novels set from a first-person Doctor perspective. And I think it was even a rule back, at least in the Virgin publishing days, that you weren't able to... being inside the Doctor's head wasn't allowed because that would reveal too much of the mystery of the character.
Yeah, not only do they not allow first-person narration, I mean, I think they very much tried to avoid even kind of showing sort of like his opinions or any more than was strictly necessary for the plot. That rule is somewhat broken here.
The sequence and the observations, it reminds me a lot of like the beginning of the 11th Hour, where you kind of see the Doctor looking across the village square and kind of like hyper time, like the technique that's used on Sherlock. He's observing everyone and seeing that Rory's taking a picture with his cell phone, but not at what everyone else is taking a picture of. You kind of get that when he inhales the first breath of air as he's leaving the TARDIS, and he's able to get this almost like mental map of his surroundings just from the textures and the sounds and the smells, really in the first nanosecond as he leaves the ship.
Yeah, and I don't know if it really works for me. Don't like to think of the Doctor as being kind of like a superhero. And it's almost kind of getting a little bit kind of superpowers-y here. And also, the Doctor, when we were talking about sense of smell, I mean, the Doctor decides to regulate his sense of smell down to human level just for the challenge of it. And it's like, oh, okay, well, that seems a strange thing to do. I mean, about Portsmouth, quite a bit of old Portsmouth still exists. So, like HMS Victory, which is a ship that gets mentioned in here, and it's a ship that Nelson actually dies on, that is still there. You can go and visit it. And I mean, Portsmouth has had development since then, but there is still quite a bit of the old town still remaining. There is a pub that features rather prominently in later chapters, and that is a genuine pub.
Oh,
the three times I've been past it.
Oh, that's cool. I had no idea that those were real locations.
Yeah. So a lot of the Portsmouth stuff. Yeah, you could go and try to recreate the walks. Whether or not it would be any success, I don't know. I don't know Portsmouth that well, but certainly there was quite a few bits like no, that's there. So as we've kind of like alluded to previously, the Doctor basically buys the ship, the Tweed. He meets Captain Stewart and starts teaching his crew Ticket to Ride. And whilst he's befriending the crew, the TARDIS gets loaded onto a ship bound for India, and that's the last we see of it.
Yes.
In the book.
Yeah. And the book ends without them even finding the TARDIS, and there's... I don't know if we'll get to that at the time, but I wonder if maybe Jim Mortimore might have been setting himself up for a sequel or another book commission to perhaps tell that portion of the story. Yeah,
until Chris Butcher came along and said, "Oh, I'll write some novels instead," and everyone went, "Oh, you actually created Leela, so yeah, there you go." But yeah, the Doctor feels that Earth is small enough that he'll run into it again, so he seems quite blasé about it.
He's not entirely worried about it.
Yeah.
He's being observed by a man with a ginger mop of hair, who is lurking suspiciously in the shadows, and he's going to show up again later.
He gets held captive at gunpoint to end the chapter. We're quite good on the chapter ends, which I think you do need to have. If you've got this kind of weird structure where you're jumping back and forth, you do need to have kind of like memorable cliffhangers, even if those cliffhangers aren't necessarily addressed the next time that that narrative thread picks up again. So we go back onto the Tweed. Leela's now kind of trying to break into the cabin that Royston and Richards have been by. The sailors start talking about a cyclone, and she can kind of sense it, feeling it's like invisible monsters, and she thinks it's a demon that she can kill. Until the Doctor says, no, you can't do that. She describes lightning as being the demon cyclone throwing the sun into the sea. We see this terrific storm with these kind of huge waves, and at one point they find themselves at the foot of a giant wave and another ship right at the top of it, and you just get her sense of awe and fear, and you can also see how it's kind of like it's almost like reinforcing her belief structure as well. It's interesting.
It's the first of several events that the ship kind of encounters along the way. So the first one here is a major storm, and it's Leela's first time experiencing it at sea. So, but it's not the last of their troubles on their journey. But it's kind of the first big one.
Yeah.
And she doesn't tie herself to the mast either, so there's that extra tension of her kind of wandering around the ship or, clinging to things, trying not to get flung off. And then it kind of ends on a cliffhanger with waves crashing over the ship, and then we cut back. Leela waking up, and this is back...
it's back in London.
Yep, before they left.
Yeah, so she's waking up in a room that's been given to her by Stockwood that's bigger than her family's hut. And she's just basically being freaked out by the city, especially all of the metal that she sees, because she thinks kind of metal means things are holy. Basically, she's experiencing culture shock. It's a place she doesn't understand, even though, as we say before, she's seen it in towns. And she prays for the moon to brighten away the darkness. And at this point, she sees light dancing in the garden, and she believes it to be her god Cryuni, the death spirit, who must be hunting Stockwood because he's 50 summers old. She hears something downstairs and kind of goes and investigates. And she sees footprints, but knows that spirits don't leave footprints. So she thinks that Cryuni has sent a human to steal the tablet. Basically there's a burglary situation here, and Leela is describing it in the oddest way possible.
Mm-hmm. And she comes across Royston, who she's thinking is the burglar, but he's adamant that he's innocent and that he was also looking for the burglar.
And he's conveniently shot the burglar, who was the butler from earlier. But Leela thinks that she heard Royston conspiring with the butler. There's an interesting bit here where Royston wants to call the police, knowing that it's going to put a halt to the expedition. And Stockwood decides to bury the butler in the garden instead, because he just wants to just go ahead and just have the expedition. Yeah, and Leela thinks that because the butler's a big chap, that burying him will bring in many crops.
Leela says, we could bury him, or you could eat him.
Yes.
And she's asked, your tribe eats their dead, and she says, only our friends and family, the honored among us.
Yes. Well, because she says it's because they don't eat their enemies. What they do with their enemies is they feed them to their animals, because it's bad to eat something that hates you. You can see how that makes a degree of sense, but yeah.
So I do have to wonder though, like some of the, like I said again, the characterization of Leela, a lot of what comes through in this novel we don't get in the TV series. So
maybe it's very noisy in her head.
Yeah.
So when she's looking distracted, it's just because she's going, "Oh, Cryuni!"
We then cut back. We jump forward a few months. So it's after the events of the storm on the ship, and the storm had lasted 3 days, and they're kind of recovering from it and picking everything up. But
they're well off course, and they've find themselves near the Antarctic. They've lost most of their fresh drinking water. So they decide to sail close to an iceberg to chip off some ice so they've got something to drink when it melts, which makes sense. So whilst everyone's kind of chipping away, kind of getting ice cubes, Leela decides to try to break into the cabin again. As she's about to open the door, Richards sneaks upon her and kind of like shoots a warning shot. And then kind of like Stockwood and the Doctor also rock up, and there's a little bit of a confrontation here, and then Leela sort of decides that she's kind of had enough of this, and shouting that she'll be with the pigs as those have yet to betray her. Yeah, it's a bit odd. And then there's very conveniently, like within a couple of sentences, kind of like the iceberg kind of hits the ship, so everyone kind of runs off, and so she manages to break into the room anyway. There is a bit of that where you kind of you build up some tension, and then a situation looks like it's not going to happen, and then just gets very quickly resolved. You're just like, oh, okay.
The ship does do a lot of convenient lurching when the when the
plot demands it.
Yep.
Yeah, it does. So Leela's managed to barge her way in, and there's a figure in there rises and tries to shoot her. and she realizes that it's Stump. Who is Stump, you might say? Which is a very good question, because Stump hasn't been named in the narrative yet. And she clearly wants to kill him. It's the joys of a non-linear narrative, folks.
Should we point out who Stump is, or hold off?
Well, he's never actually named in the bits in Portsmouth.
Yeah, so I think if we don't connect the two,
we might as well say now. I think maybe so.
He's the red-haired guy who is following the Doctor and is the person who shoots Leela as they're leaving the port. So the bit of metal that was dug out of Leela's shoulder from the first chapter by the Doctor, or sorry, not the Doctor, the Royston, the medical doctor. So the person who had shot Leela has been on board this entire time, kind of hidden away in this cabin.
For Stump, I just imagine Cole Meany for some reason.
I pictured Toby Jones.
Oh,
yes. Stump.
Toby Jones would have been good casting. Basically, they get into a bit of a scrap, and there's lots of ice around the ship by this point. Sort of Stump kind of jumps overboard onto the ice, and kind of like Leela pursues him, and he slips and sort of basically breaks his leg. And so they're on the ice, there's fog everywhere, and he's clearly kind of really seriously ill as well. And so Leela leaves him to his death, and he's kind of shrieking after that he'll haunt her. And then the ice splits, and she thinks that they've sailed into a Cryoni's lair. And the ship somehow manages to break free. And I've read that bit about maybe 4 or 5 times. I was like, no, I still don't quite figure out what happens in that bit. But anyway.
I don't see how chipping away at a little bit of the ice would split a giant iceberg in half, but it is kind of a cool sequence to, know, Leela and Stump kind of scurrying along the iceberg and fighting each other, and Leela jumping back onto the boat. It's kind of it's a action sequence number 2.
Yes,
on the boat after the big storm.
Yeah,
but there's more to come.
Yeah, there is. So we go back to Portsmouth. And Leela's investigating the Doctor's disappearance, and so she's at the hotel, and she notices there's a doorman there who's kind of showing a bit of attitude towards her, and she assumes it's because he recognises that she's a hunter, but it's quite clear to the reader that he thinks she's a prostitute.
Yeah.
And so she's wandering around Portsmouth trying to find, amazed by the priests, because she thinks that everyone that has any metal is a priest. On them, and she kind of does a bit of kind of like tracking and finds a mint humbug, which means that that's the Doctor's trail. She gets a bit of information that the Doctor might have gone off to the Three Tons pub, and she's being followed by the redhead man, so Stump.
Yeah.
And there's a brilliant scene in this marketplace. She's kind of being overpowered by how many people there are there. And this kind of like street kid runs past, sort of with some kind of meat, and the redhead man realizes that she's got a knife on her. Starts shouting that she's a cutthroat, so like a pirate. And so this mob forms and kind of captures her, and the redhead man is quite smug because they've done his work for him.
And the way the chapters are structured too, it's interesting, and it's the first time that this happens in the book, but it's not the last, where you get the death of a character, and then in the immediate next chapter you get kind of another scene with them or a revelation about them or something that kind of ties it in. And so even though the chapters are non-linear, thematically the way they're sequenced, there's interesting, and some of this might be coincidental, but I thought that there may have been some purpose there in terms of how they were placed.
This book was published in 1998. It was originally written a bit earlier than that. We'll go on to that later. I think that Pulp Fiction probably has a little bit of a legacy here, the Quentin Tarantino film. Just because that does slight spoilers for a 20-odd-year-old movie, that does a similar thing where you have kind of characters sort of reappearing after you've seen them die, and which leading to extra poignancy at some points.
And we should mention too that the reason Leela's having to track the Doctor is because he traveled to Portsmouth by TARDIS and he didn't take her with him, so she had to travel down with Horace and all the supplies and stuff for the as he was gathering the stuff he needed for the expedition. So
we're supposed to go back to the tweet. Actually, we find ourselves we're kind of like Leela is dreaming about her dead sister, and it's quite a vivid like nightmare. She pictures herself as her sister and then in turn as her mother, sort of dealing with the aftermath of her sister's death, because the sister was killed by Horder, the kind of some of the beasts from the Face of Evil, whilst in her crib. And so Leela's mum is called Neela, which is bizarre. It seems a bit strange to kind of give your child a rhyming name, but then again, people call their kids after themselves, so who am I to judge?
She's woken from her dream by a kind of a commotion taking place outside the ship, and she goes to the topside and she discovers an octopus in a deadly battle with a whale. And there's a bunch of sharks encircling them, and the ship's kind of pulling up alongside this fight that's going on.
Yeah, and Royston basically regards it as a spectacle. So Leela gets into a conversation with him, and Royston says that the reason why he tried to save Stump is because he's a doctor. He has been trying to use Stump's help as a bargaining chip to try to kind of sort of either get Richard to turn back or for kind of things to be less fraught.
Do we learn who Richards is at this point?
No.
Okay.
No. That's still to come.
Okay.
But it is interesting that so Leela refers to everybody pretty much by their surnames. Including Richards. So she kind of treats the genders equally in that kind of regards. I mean, she is. I think that there's quite a bit of kind of Leela in the DNA of Xena Warrior Princess. Not that I've ever seen that much of that show, but so we've also found out that Stump was kind of like wounded deeply by bullets causing an infection. He was also dragged in the ship's wake for 10 hours, and the reason why he was locked in the cabin was to actually protect him from Leela. So as soon as that's said, the whale hits the ship and Leela and Royston fall off into shark-infested water because that's what the narrative demands. We get quite a cool action sequence where kind of Leela fights off a couple of sharks, and including one from underneath. They kind of notice that the ship's on the horizon, and they realize they've got to kind of get out of the water, be away from the sharks. And the best way to do that is to kind of get onto the whale. And she also feels that they need to kind of kill the octopus. So we also get this sequence where you have Leela fighting an octopus and stabbing in the eye. Mm-hmm. But there's also one other little thing. That there's quite a cool scene where sort of Royston earlier on in that conversation we were talking about saying that sort of like we're not animals, we're people. We've got morals and duties and choices. And Leela says that kind of like the animal way is better. You kill your enemies, or your enemies kill you. Sort of life simple.
And we haven't even gotten to the most, I guess a word might be outlandish or...
outlandish is a good word.
Yeah, there's more to come. So as of right now, we leave Leela and Royston riding this whale up into the... And Leela's... She almost has like superhuman powers. It seems like when she's fighting the sharks and the octopus and
she's a hunter. Yeah, I mean,
she's a hunter, but she's human. She's not Aquaman.
Yeah. So back to Portsmouth. We're now seeing things from Stockwood's point of view. So he's noticed that Leela's missing, and he's also trying to defend Royston like all of the equipment that he's intending bringing, because he's saying he has to kind of cope with what could go wrong whilst they're out on Easter Island, and also for trading with the natives, which is nice. It is worth saying Easter Island is incredibly isolated. It's 1,000 miles to the nearest island, or nearest other sort of settlement, which is Pitcairn Island, that nowadays has only 50 people on it.
I just have to totally question my geography education in the American school system, because for the longest time I thought the Galapagos were in the South Pacific by Australia, and I had thought Easter Island was where kind of the Galapagos were closer to the coast of South America. I had no idea that Easter Island was so far remote and off the coast. It really is almost as far out there as Hawaii, just farther south. It's really in the middle of the Pacific. or the South Pacific.
Yeah.
It's incredibly remote.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and also, I mean, it's amazing that actually it got inhabited.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of people would have just had to just kind of taken a bit of a punt, go off in a raft. Like, oh, here we are.
I kind of went down a Wikipedia rabbit hole reading about the Rongo Rongo and the history of the island and the Polynesian diaspora theory in terms of like how they populated. It's really fascinating. I suppose that was kind of one of the purposes of Doctor Who, right? To tell historical or pseudo historical tales and kind of spark that interest. So it did so here for me. So
I mean, there's lots of people that sort of most of what they know about history is from Doctor Who. Yeah. Starkwood has this kind of hunch that the Doctor might be kind of hanging out with dockhands and thinks, oh, we might be down in the Three Tons pub. So they kind of go there, and this woman's boot is kind of chucked out the window, and they burst in, kind of expecting that it's Leela in a fight, and actually it's a prostitute fighting the barman. Kind of as Starkwood leaves, he gets coshed by Stump.
As they were kind of detailing all the different supplies that they were loading onto the ship.
Yeah.
I didn't realize this, but it totally makes sense. They loaded 3 tons of dental casting plaster to take a casting of one of the stones. And I've seen castings of the stones. Is it pronounced Maui? I'm not sure how the stones are pronounced. But I've seen castings, life-size castings of those in museums before, but I never thought to realize, like, oh yeah, to do that you'd actually have to cart tons of this material all the way there to do that. And back when they did, it was kind of a cool detail that I would think that like a real expedition, non-fictional expedition would probably load similar supplies. So I found that kind of interesting.
Yeah, because I went down a very similar Easter Island rabbit hole to you, and I discovered a kind of a painting that was done allegedly of the time of Easter Island's discovery, or around about that kind of time. It shows the kind of the Maui, and they look nothing like what everybody kind of knows them as. But that's possibly because maybe the artist, if they'd actually been there, was going from memory or something way after the effect. It's interesting. I mean, certainly this book, if nothing else, is well researched. Mm-hmm. So, or at least gives the feeling of that. So
we have the
ridiculous.
Fight. Yeah.
We now get to the ridiculous bit.
Yes. So after the fight in the tavern, we cut back Leela riding the whale.
Yes.
And now we get the intersection with the movie Sharknado.
Because Leela is steering it using rope. Because the rope came from the boat. I was like, how much boat wreckage was that? And so she's kind of got she's got the rope kind of in and around the whale. Why am I trying to explain it? It's bizarre. I mean, it's your belief just gets stretched.
She's steering this whale, and they are catching up with the boat a little bit. Or they're at least headed in the general direction. Yeah,
well, they're headed in the direction, but also, I mean, I don't really know how good she is at navigation, but she's a hunter, so yeah.
The whale is dying from the attack it suffered from the octopus, so it's unable to dive. Yeah. So it has to stay near the surface because it's not able to, I guess its lungs are punctured or something where it's not able to breathe very well.
So in the distance, they see a shape, and they think at first it's a ship, but no, it's a tornado. And so you've got fish falling from the sky, which is kind of cool. And then Leela decides that she's going to recreate Jonah and the whale. And so she and Royston climb into the whale's mouth as it's picked up by a tornado.
Yeah. The whale is near death or has died at this point, so it's very much like... Yeah, Jonah and the whale are climbing inside a tauntaun, or it's and then the water spout sucks them up into the air, and
it's bizarre.
Yeah, it's instead of jumping the shark, you're
you're riding the whale.
Yeah, or instead of nuking the fridge, you're inside the whale. Yeah.
So away from that, insanity. We'll go back to Portsmouth. Leela, the Doctor, Stockwood and Royston, they're all tied to posts in a tidal tunnel. And so the Doctor tries to use a Houdini trick, but only manages to free one arm. And Leela uses a technique from the web spinner trees from Face of Evil. Yeah, I don't remember her ever really encountering those in the TV thing. But anyway, she basically, she has a technique, and she manages to do it. So the Doctor and Leela kind of head off back to the pub through a kind of like a secret door in a pier that for some reason the Doctor kind of thinks might be there.
Yeah, it gets very Goonies for a second, yeah.
Yeah. And they kind of break in once the Doctor... And there's quite a cool scene where the Doctor brings out a whole host of keys that he has. He's got this, obviously, this enormous key ring. He's quite pleased that they're from the time before kind of like double mortise locks were invented. So they're able to kind of get into the cellar. And Stump is there. And there's a big old fight, chased down to the pier. And Stump has kind of like got the upper hand on them. And then suddenly the police arrive. I'm not quite sure if the police were actually... the police were a thing by this point.
Yeah, I think they were responding to gunshots.
Yeah, no, but what I mean is the concept of the police.
Oh.
Because that is a more modern thing than people think. But yeah, so the police respond to the kind of gunshots. Stump jumps into the water amid a volley of pistol fire and obviously gets hit. And it's like the Doctor kind of boards the Tweed, but they find that it's been hijacked by a cloaked figure. As well, during all of this, the Doctor kind of says, because like Lena's rattling off about Cryuni, and the Doctor says that Cryuni is a construct and not a real god, and that Cryuni is from cryogenic suspension. Should be regarded as a giver of life, not a taker of it.
And this is where Leela gets shot.
Yeah.
Her wound in her shoulder from the opening of the book. We finally, now that we're almost done with part one of the book, it kind of dovetails back into the opening of the book, because this is how she gets her wound in the bullet that gets removed.
Yeah. And also, as I said before, Stump is not named in any of these sportsman scenes, so how does Leela know the name? But it kind of helps, rather than her saying, "Oh, it's the redhead man," because that would give the game away. As
the boat's departing, Stump is, hanging on to it by a rope, and that's how he gets dragged in the wake.
Poor Stump. Anyway. We now go into part two, and we start off with a very odd chapter where kind of like Leela is basically reminiscing about the is it the Zolst wind, and kind of like getting lost in her youth. And it's basically, it's just her reminiscing about kind of like the wind in in the forest and how damaging it could be. It doesn't really tie into anything.
It's an interesting kind of transition between the two halves of the book. Part one of the book is really the first 2/3 of the book. It's not cleanly divided. But chapter 15 is kind of an interesting transition because Leela's visions that she's experiencing in the vortex, if we were to kind of follow on from the narrative before every other chapter thing, you might think that she's inside the whale and experiencing these hallucinations as part of the Sharknado, but it's not. It's her transitions that happen later on. Yeah, so it's kind of an interesting bridge in that it connects the two halves of the book through a little bit of kind of misdirection.
We're finally kind of arriving on Easter Island. We're going to have some of these chapters from now on are going to be on Easter Island, and some of these will be
elsewhere.
Yes. We're seeing this from Stockwood's point of view, and we get confirmation at this point that Richards is the sister of Alexander, and she actually speaks to Stockwood for the first time in the journey, and she tells him that she wants to kill him as much as some people desire perfume, which is nice. So they kind of disembark, and they see some of the stone Maui. And the Doctor uses a molecular analyzer and confirms they're not ogre. So this is not like a pre-sequel to the Stones of Blood.
It is cool that we get that reference, and I know Stones of Blood takes place later in the Doctor's timeline, after Leela's left, but it would make sense that he has some knowledge of these stone creatures, the ogre. And I also kind of wonder, like, maybe this is yet to be written, but I wonder if the ogre and the weeping angels are somehow related in terms of like living stone. That might be
yeah, that makes sense. Doctor notices that the Maui's mass is fluctuating, which sort of becomes a little bit important later. And he also comes out with a wonderful quote from Thor Heyerdahl. Have you ever heard of Thor Heyerdahl?
I have not, no.
So he's a real person who was this Norwegian adventurer who, shortly after the Second World War, decided that it would be a jolly nice idea to kind of sail off on a raft in the same way that people thought the Polynesian people might have done, to kind of test the theory of whether those things were actually properly seaworthy.
Huh.
And he survived. So yeah, they were. And so he did a lot of adventuring like that, and sort of went to Easter Island. And there's a quote from him saying that upon arriving at Easter Island, it was as though we'd anchored off a hovering spaceship off the shore of an extinct world. And also Thor Heyerdahl, when he was really quite elderly in the 90s, recreated some of these voyages for TV. I remember watching it. Go down a rabbit hole about Thor Heyerdahl. He was an amazing man. Sort of really quite an eccentric character. And he was just rocked up in all manner of different places. So he would also go to Azerbaijan. I mean, he probably one of the great adventurers of the second half of the 20th century.
Oh, that's really cool. No, I hadn't heard of him.
I mean, I don't know whether any of his TV stuff's on YouTube and how well it's aged, but yeah, I was a bit obsessed about Diane when I was young. So yeah. Anyway, we also have some nice quotes as well. But the Doctor basically does a lot of kind of showboating, and there's a nice sequence where we have this line of saying, "Hope is a good breakfast," and there's but a bad supper, which I quite like. And the Doctor seems to be very confident that Leela and Royston are dead, but Stockwood undercuts this in the narration because he tells us that actually the Doctor spent 2 days trying to persuade the captain to turn around and search for them. And now kind of Stockwood then also starts reminiscing about their first landing. They were kind of like greeted by the mayor of the island, and they kind of assigned him Tortoro as a guide. And for some reason, everyone seemed to be able to understand each other fairly well. And then when they started investigating the Maui, Tortoro's child falls ill. Basically, we get to the events where they find the Rongo Rongo tablets, having gone to this holy place that Totoro really didn't want them to go to, and that's how the events happen, where you get the prologue. Mm-hmm. And then the flashback ends because there's some cannon fire, and then suddenly some Peruvian sailors rock up and shoot the Doctor.
Yeah, they shoot him in the kind of near the right heart.
Yeah,
and he collapses. And there's I think you mentioned it earlier, but the Doctor seems to be aware that Leela's still alive from the shark, whale, octopus thing, but it's not really clear how he knows that. He just mentions that her heart still beats, like he's able to sense it somehow.
Yeah, I just thought it was just hope. But and the fact that where it says, yeah, there's stuff about kind of like the gods favouring the young because they killed them, and it says, well, where Leela comes from, the gods are real and they don't favour her. It could be that he knows somehow, but I just kind of got the feeling that it was just his kind of gut instinct, which could have led to kind of like a bitter irony if the original twist for the Sunmakers went ahead, because originally in that story Leela was going to die.
Oh, I don't think I knew that.
Oh, okay. Oh. Yeah. There is a specific scene that was filmed. That wasn't filmed of her death, but yeah, where they'd have to kind of change the script a bit. But she's kind of trapped in the machine. But anyway, we digress. We find ourselves kind of like on another world. Like Leela's woken by Stockwood, so we're kind of further on in the story. Royston's nearby, and he's been unconscious as he was before the sun ate them. And he's also been stabbed by a pirate. This is quite get lots of information being thrown at you. You just got to go, oh, okay, right. We're obviously a lot further on here, and there's some weird stuff. And they're in a strange world of kind of like abandoned huts, and they realise that they're in the crater of a volcano, and they kind of climb up, and they discover that the volcano crater is surrounded by a city larger than London. Mm-hmm. And there's 2 huge moons and a dark, sullen sky. They're not in Kansas anymore.
And the city, I think they even describe it as eventually they say it's larger than the distance they traveled from London to Easter Island, which is just a huge city, and it's completely abandoned. There's no life anywhere.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's implied here or not, but traveling, they got there through some sort of gateway or bridge, and there's an implication that traveling through that bridge helps heal them. So I'm wondering if all the wounds from all the gun action that's going on throughout this book, some of it gets cleared up by traveling to and from using the system that we're kind of learning more about.
Yeah. So we go back to Easter Island. Sotwood's hiding in like a cliff face, and he. After the Doctor's been shot, and he finds a tunnel that's kind of part of the network that Tortoro had originally shown him on his first time on the island, and he stumbles across some of the islanders who are hiding in there, and they mistake him for a Peruvian who speaks a bit of local language, and then Jennifer Richards, to give her her full name, for the first time in the book, rocks up. And sort of Richards reckons that they're slavers, these Peruvians, and they also realise that the pirates have captured a doctor, and they find out that the pirates arrived about 3 days earlier, and basically they tricked the islanders into signing a slave contract, and there's been a war between the islanders and the pirates, and 700 people have died.
And a lot of the islanders are taking refuge in this cave system under the island, which is left over from, it's really like lava flow tubes that have hardened, that they're able to, it's like a kind of a vast network of, which I guess is really a thing on the island. They have this whole like lava tube system that you can, it's big enough to like stand and walk through.
It's also probably worth saying, the Peruvian slavers raiding the island, that was a real thing.
Yes.
And they did decimate the population. It actually happened a decade earlier in real life than is depicted in the novel, but yeah, it really did happen. Mm-hmm. Yeah, as odd as it might seem, because like Easter Island, it's part of Chile now, rather than Peru. It's a really long way for them to go to capture slaves. But, you know.
And speaking of Jennifer Richards, is this the point where we learn that she has a hidden knife on her that she's been hiding the entire length of the book? It's kind of Chekhov's knife, if you will.
Yes, yeah, possibly. Yeah. We now go back to the other world. I think that's probably the best way to describe this bit. But they've realised that kind of Royston's kind of gone because they kind of track his trail, do Sotwood and Leela, to a monolith that upon touch turns into like a three-dimensional window showing stars and vegetation, and they go through that into kind of a place of different gravity, and so they go through a whole series of these until they find Royston. So basically they are traveling between various different worlds.
It's like a network of gateways. The way it was described was really cool. So you've got the outline of the statue head, but you step through it. So you've got the shape of the Maui. So if it's night out, you'll get this like brilliant, like glowing. It looks like a statue, but it's really just the daylight you're seeing in that other dimension before you step through the gateway. Or in a bright sunlit planet, you'll get the outline of it, but it looks kind of obsidian and dark, and you walk through it into the nighttime of the. Fortunately, all these planets are class M or breathable. yeah. As they're wandering through.
Yeah, they're also all devoid of life.
Yes.
They find Royston, and then there's a monolith there that kind of causes Stockwood and Leela to experience the extinction of a civilization. And Royston also shows them this kind of like a history chamber thing that reveals that one of the worlds that they've been to was a moon that all of the monolith kind of material came from. The Doctor appears carrying Richard soaked in blood and suggests that he knows what this all means, which would be useful.
I'm jumping ahead here, but
yeah,
that's kind of how the book ends. So the Doctor appearing with Richard's kind of in his arms, ready to try and save her. We'll get to that in that's one of those dovetail moments that we saw in the first half.
Yeah.
And then we jump back to Earth, and this is now from the point of view of the Doctor. Again,
yes,
right?
it is.
Yeah, the only other chapter from his perspective.
Yeah, so the Doctor's heart's healing due to double redundancy, and he starts kind of meditating, and we get references to the Abominable Snowman.
Yeah, because he had been shot in the
Yes.
previous cliffhanger
Yeah.
2 chapters ago. So yeah,
Yes.
he's putting himself into a trance that, as you mentioned, he had learned in Tibet from the Abominable Snowman story.
He tells all of the islanders that are in the hold of him that he's got a plan, and they think he's the devil and try to kill him. Peruvians kind of come in, they take him to meet the pirate captain, De Bryce. He calls him Man of the Cloth, so I kind of assume that he mistakes him for a missionary.
Mm-hmm.
They have a kind of like a bit of exchange of barbs, and the Doctor says that Peru is going to force De Bryce to return to slaves, but that'll mean introduction of smallpox and destruction of the culture, which is what actually happens, sadly, in real life. Mm-hmm. So the Doctor tries to bribe him with diamonds to kind of like change his course, and De Bryce just takes them off him because he's that kind of guy. Mm-hmm. De Bryce says that he can kind of like convert valueless human life into precious stones by kind of just getting his slaves just to work in the mines and stuff in Peru.
Yeah, you get the explanation of, or at least his perspective, like the whole slaver mentality, and it's really kind of sickening to see it broken down into those kind of dollars and those terms. And
yeah.
We then, the next chapter is relatively short, and that's from Jennifer Richards' point of view, and that's where we get the reference to Chekhov's knife and her desire to kill Horace Stockwood still.
Yeah.
And this is so kind of from her perspective of being carried by the Doctor through the gateway, which has healed her wounds too, because she's... We'll get to that in a second, but she gets shot as well. The implication is, the Doctor takes her through. And then we jump back to the cave under the island earlier, and...
We've got Stockwood waiting in the cave of Richards and the islanders. And so the islanders then kind of like take them in through like a network of tunnels until they find the Council of War. It's being led by Leela. Who has survived the whole kind of whale thing.
We don't ever see that resolution. We get it, which is fine, I think, because
it's ridiculous.
Yeah, the setup was, but they survived, and they were rescued by a group of Polynesians who weren't part of this island, but knew enough to know how to get them there. And so Leela and Royston have been having their own adventures for quite some time.
Yeah, I mean, bearing in mind that as I say, the nearest island is over 1,000 miles away. But anyway, it doesn't matter. They're there. But some of the older inhabitants are starting to recognise Stockwood, and this old woman says that Stockwood killed her brother, and he tries to argue that he at least saved her brother's son, but apparently the Peruvians killed him.
And then they bring out this old guy who has been kept down in the caves for years, and his skin was described as parchment. It was so pale. And it turns out that this was Alexander Richards, who they had left for dead, but now was, 30 years on. And they had been keeping him prisoner just for this moment. Kind of the old woman on the island seems like a spiritual leader. Her name's Atani, turns and says to Horace Stockwood, she says, "This is your punishment," and then kill Alexander Richards in front of Stockwood and his sister Jennifer Richards and everyone else. Basically describe it in very stark terms as this, we've been saving this punishment for you all this time.
Yeah, it's quite grim. We now go back onto the other worlds, and we have this odd chapter that's basically kind of like, it's told from Royston's point of view, but we see a chorus of thoughts from, amongst others, like Leela, Royston, Stockwood, Doctor, and Richards.
Yeah,
I don't think there's really much to sort of say about that, but
it gives you hints as to what was going on in terms of why the statues were set up, but the Doctor explains it more clearly later on, but you get kind of hints of what's happening.
Yeah.
Then we jump back to the island.
Yeah, so the islanders, they're washing Stockwood and Alex's blood. So Leela thinks they're welcoming into their tribe, so she just leaves them to it and goes off with some of the islanders to lead an attack on the Peruvians. Basically, it now turns into, if you've ever played Assassin's Creed, particularly the pirate one, there's a whole series of battles on kind of like on pirate ships, which is quite cool. Kind of like sneaking around, and so they managed to liberate the Tweed. And they then swim to the leading Peruvian ship, and Leela sees that the Doctor's there, chained to a cannon casing on a plank. And there's pirates that are betting on how long it'll take for the Doctor to die. Just as she's trying to think of a way to kind of rescue him, suddenly there's some cannon fire, and just all hell breaks loose. And you get this kind of sequence where Leela realizes she can't cut the Doctor's chains. She needs to kind of go and get the keys off Debrassi, the pirate captain. Royston kills a pirate to save Leela, and thus proving that he's a good man, but then ends up being kind of stabbed by a dagger. Leela manages to kind of get the key and rescue the Doctor, but the Doctor kind of like falls into the water, and she grabs Royston, pulling him to safety because the ship's ablaze, and they jump to the sea just as the ship explodes because of the magazine. I mean, it's a brilliant sequence. I mean, I have not done justice to it, but it's just
yeah. This whole sequence really is, I feel like, the climax of the book, where you have Leela kind of stealth slaughtering pirates and leading a slave revolt, and it's just it's a really cool sequence. And the Doctor walking the plank, and it's just. Yeah, it was one of my favorites in the book.
It's fabulous stuff.
And so it ends with the Doctor, Leela, and Royston all in the water, and then it jumps to back to this off-world planet where the Doctor and Leela and Royston and Jennifer Richards and Stockwood are all listening to the Doctor explain what happened and why this civilization really it built these. Different statues and sent them out through space, I guess looking for civilizations that they could influence and bring back DNA.
Their race were under attack. Like, kind of Krypton sends out a baby and a cousin. In this, they've launched their DNA into space, and the DNA kind of attaches itself to various kind of hosts. And so Easter Island is just one of many places where the DNA landed.
And the stones act as portals to all these different worlds where these probes they sent out with the DNA make contact, and it kind of subconsciously influenced the natives on this island, the native population, to build these stones. You know, this religion developed around it, and it was so ingrained in them that it caused them to really deforest their island and create all sorts of, I wouldn't call it climate change, but certainly local to the island in terms of the flora and fauna that grow on it. It led to like almost all the trees being gone, because that's how they would move these stones from the kind of the quarry pit where they excavated them to their positions. I don't know that it explains why the stones come alive, though.
Yeah.
But
yeah, and the Doctor hypothesized that apparently this civilization brings people back to kind of help recreate their race, and they do that from time to time. And that some returnees brought back a virus, hence all of the fact that all of these worlds they've been visiting have been dead, and the computer records show those returnees came from Earth 30 years ago. So it was Stockwood's original crew have brought a virus that have killed all these other worlds, and the virus is still present.
The implication is that it's smallpox, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the son who was healed, 30 years prior in the prologue through, traveling through the gateway. That was the most recent time the gateway had been used, because the Rongo is that tablet is the activating instructions for the gateway. So without that, what they call an incantation, without speaking those words, they can't activate the portal. They didn't have a copy of it on them, but they had like a rubbing of it, The Doctor notices that the sun's starting to go out. So there's some sort of failsafe that is going to destroy the entire network of portals, because the creators, who are unnamed. They don't get a name in this, but they kind of design this framework so that if something were to come through and use it for bad purposes, they'd have this failsafe to kind of self-destruct the network. And the Doctor's, I think, hoping that if they can get everyone back through the portal that doesn't have, because the failsafe isn't activated when one of the native Easter Islanders goes through, because they have the host DNA as part of their makeup. But so they're hoping if they can go back through, that'll deactivate the failsafe. And they recognize that of everyone who's with them, Leela, her blood is probably what they would need to manufacture an antidote to the virus, because she comes from the far future.
Yeah, and because her ancestors would have had some kind of like antibody, it was basically space science. But yeah, and also around about this point as well, Royston realizes that kind of Stockwood has kind of gone off, and so has Richards, and he hears a scream, and he finds that Richards has stabbed Stockwood, and then she's killed herself. Which raises the question: how does Richardson rate if she's dead? But hey ho. But that's another reason for them to kind of go back, because they think if they travel back, that will heal Stockwood. So they start their journey back to Rapa Nui, or Easter Island. On Easter Island, we've kind of gone back a little bit. We have Stockwood's kind of grieving for Alexander, as is Richards, and she goes off on one. Sort of saying that a woman can never go off on an adventure, abandoning family and loved ones. So I kind of think, isn't that what she's done? And then Leela, once she's finished invoking the priest Heisenberg, which is quite cool, she tells Richards that if women in her land do not learn and travel and take control, then they're already dead. And also that Alexander's death had actually given Richard's life, or his disappearance all that time ago. We have all the voice-activated computer stuff that we were talking about. And because the translation is incomplete, only some of the people get transported across in that first wave. So, which is why we don't see the Doctor and Richards. We just see Stockwood and Royston and Leela.
Yep. Why the Doctor and Richards show up later, which kind of it dovetails to earlier when we were talking about that. And that's really where the book ends. There's the epilogue after, but
we also see that there is another chapter where we
the confrontation.
The Doctor tries to get the Rongo off Richards, and then the pirate captain appears. And it all kind of gets very Errol Flynn, with the Doctor kind of fighting the pirate captain with cutlasses on top of a cliff, and Richards sort of basically offers the captain all her gold if he kills the Doctor, and he dismisses it because all of her gold's in England or on the boat that he already has, and so his men stab her, and so the Doctor somehow kind of causes the captain to fall off the cliff. And so one of the final bits of the chapter is that he insists the islanders take her to the cave, as every life is important, every life, which is kind of because this Doctor doesn't feel very kind of traditionally doctory. It was quite a nice kind of touch, and that's where we see the end of Richards.
And then it ends with the epilogue 30 years later. So by this point, Stockwood's probably in his 70s or 80s, I would imagine.
80s sort of thought.
It's 60 years after the prologue, and he had been living on the island for all this time. He never went back to England, and he's been working with the population in real life really dropped off, from something like 28,000 people to less than 50 or 100 people in the island in a really short period of time, and the book explains that by the islanders using the gateways to travel back to those other worlds that are now empty and repopulate them that way. So kind of an interesting ending.
Yeah. And also he misses chocolate surprise. Don't we all? So there ends the book. So before we get on to the marks, so you're probably wondering, because I'd kind of suggested there was a specific reason why I wanted to do this book now. And you might be wondering why that is. This book was not originally written for this TARDIS crew.
Hmm.
Yeah. So this was originally going to be a Virgin New Adventure and was announced as such. And it was announced that during the story, one of the crew will be wounded by a cannon, and that the next book it was dealing with the repercussions of the cannon wounding. So what appears to be the case was this was going to be the Seventh Doctor's regeneration story.
Oh, huh. Wow. I had no idea.
So it was going to be apparently a temporary regeneration. That was what they were thinking. But they'd also felt that they told so many stories with the Seventh Doctor that they needed to have a break of sorts.
And then Virgin lost the license, so it became
Also, the TV movie was announced. So, yeah. This could have been up there with kind of like Logopolis and everything. So,
wow.
Yeah, you have just read the regeneration story that never was.
Huh. That's interesting. It kind of makes sense in terms of why it would be set up as like a two-part story, because you don't have the TARDIS doesn't get recovered at the end of it, and there's a reference to Marianne North, and I had to look her up. She's I guess a famous British biologist and painter that they ended up traveling in India with.
Yeah.
Maybe that factored in, or
This is going to be a Seventh Doctor and Benny, Chris and Roz as well.
I could see some of the more action sequences, like the shark punching.
Yes, yeah.
with Chris and Roz. Maybe not so much with Benny, but. Huh.
Yeah, I mean, I've looked online. I've not seen any kind of confirmation of what, but certainly the Doctor Who magazine at the time, because I definitely remember noticing it and thinking, hang on, they're going to regenerate the Doctor. Surely that's what that means. This was announced in like '94, so before the TV movie was a thing.
You certainly have a funereal atmosphere throughout this book. You've got the kind of the specter of death, the Cryuni, lurking in Leela's mind, and there's the author note at the end of the book where Jim Mortimore talks about how he wrote this around the same time that his father passed away from a brain tumor. So I'm wondering if the process of writing this book and those events are somehow linked as well.
Yeah, because he also says that he hasn't suddenly got religion. And I kind of think reading the book, it's very, certainly religion is very much a theme, but also I kind of think the disproving of it is as much a theme as anything, because like most of the faiths that are encountered, you are shown reasons why they should not be so. There's
a really wonderful scene. It was kind of a flashback to Face of Evil in this book, where Leela's talking about how within her tribe, she was seen as a heretic for not really believing in all of the teachings of the Sevatim. But the Doctor says your doubt and your skepticism around those ancient rituals that's what makes you human. It's not the religious aspect that adds to the humanity, but it's the working through that. I thought that was kind of an interesting message.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's less a religious book than an atheist one. Mm-hmm. So what did you make of it?
It was interesting. I was wondering if there was like a reason why the story was told the way it was. I'm wondering is it a kind of an advanced literary technique to beef up a story like that, or are you adding a level of, say, artificial suspense because you're constantly cutting to new scenes without resolving previous cliffhangers, which kind of forces you to keep reading until all the plots catch up to each other. It's an interesting technique. I'm just curious what you thought as to whether it added to the story. Like, I almost I made some allusions to this last month, but Leela's not my favorite companion. I had almost considered going back and rereading this book in chronological order, and I think had it not been so much Leela first-person point of view, I might have gone back and tried to do that just to see. I don't mind, stories where kind of the journey is the point and not the destinations, right? Like a Lord of the Rings style journey, but I wonder if reading it chronologically like that, if it would have felt like the plot would have been more tedious or drawn out, because I think it's effective, I'm glad they did it that way. It's just... when I see that same sort of technique used on TV, say in shows like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or Alias or Battlestar Galactica, where they show you the climax of the book or the show, and then they cut back to 2 days earlier. Sometimes I question whether that's trying to cover up some other deficiency in the book or not.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think part of it was maybe because you kind of question the events being presented in this order. I wonder whether it ties them thematically again into the questioning of faith, because you might start to piece stuff up in your mind as to what's happened. So particularly in the early scene where you at the start of both parts. When you have the kind of like the thread that's sort of more advanced, you're kind of trying to figure it all out, and sort of based on not that much evidence at that point. And so maybe it ties in. I mean, I'm reaching a little bit here, but maybe it kind of, you yourself are trying to kind of like put together the mythology based on what you can see, even though you don't have complete knowledge.
In a way, that's kind of like a detective or like a mystery story, right? Where you're piecing together the clues.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can see that, yeah.
But I mean, certainly, I imagine that the bits out at sea, if that all been in one thing, that could have got a little bit tedious. It's a very interesting and sort of memorable read. I mean, there aren't that many Doctor Who novels like this. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the first-person narration, I mean, I found to be quite effective. I enjoy Leela's character far more than you do. I sort of found also the kind of like the splitting between the various narrators quite effective as well, because you had different styles. I mean, not so much between Stockwood and Royston. Those were maybe relatively similar, but then again, those are people of similar backgrounds. I mean, certainly when it's the Doctor and when it's Leela, you can instantly tell, I thought. At first, I was struggling to find time to actually kind of read it, because it's something you do need to be able to put some time together to concentrate. It's not something you can read like 20 minutes or so before you fall asleep.
Yeah. Yeah.
It really is it's a book that kind of that rewards concentration, I would say, but demands it as well.
Yeah, and you have to chew on it a while too, I think.
Yeah. And be prepared to flick back a little bit and go, what just happened? Because I skim read it today to kind of put my notes together, and there were a few things that kind of like fell into place that I hadn't quite spotted the first time. But I read it in the order in which it was written, rather than jumping around. Yeah.
So how would you rate this one?
So I think I'm going to give it an 8. I would love to give it a bit higher. I think it's got one or two little problems in it, but I really enjoyed this. And I think it would have been a bit higher if possibly I could feel that all the various narrators actually had opportunity to write it. Because it could be entries in the Doctor's 500-year diary, or however many years it is. But that's my kind of feel. What do you reckon? I think you'll go lower.
Yeah, but maybe not as low as you think. I'm giving it a 7.
Ah.
Yeah, I liked it. I thought it was clever, and like you said, it demands and rewards concentration. I think that's a really good way to think about it. I thought that the shifting points of view and the shifting time structures were cool, but that one of them would have been enough. Having both of them going at the same time just overcomplicated it for me a little bit in that respect. I did like with that kind of nonlinear storytelling, it did make the narrative kind of feel like a dream or like a travelogue where you're hearing about a story from several different points of view, and someone chimes in like, oh, and remember this bit happened and that bit happened. So I did like that. I felt the ending was a bit odd with Jennifer Richards, how she dies in one chapter and then the very next she's alive and the Doctor's trying to save her. I get what Mortimer's trying to do there thematically, but it's such an abrupt ending. I'm glad the epilogue was there to kind of put things in perspective. I thought Jim Mortimer definitely captured the character of Leela really, really well, because as I was reading through it, the same reasons I didn't like her in the TV shows were present. So I'm thinking, it's authentic in that respect. It's if you love the character of Leela, you will love this book. I almost gave it an 8, but some of the things I pointed out earlier in terms of her characterization and how it seemed like Talons and Robots of Death never really happened, that dropped it a little bit for me, as did just the entire sequence with the sharks and the squids and the Sharknado. I mean, that's just too silly for me. I can accept Frobisher more easily than I can all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think if that hadn't happened, I'd have given it a 9. But yeah, I mean, the thing that you said about the various different narrators and with their different events makes me kind of think of the Gospels. So yeah, another kind of religious analogy. But yeah.
Yeah, so a 7 and an 8. That's pretty solid. That's a
yeah. I must say, I'd not really heard much about this book. I mean, apart from kind of like what I knew about it possibly being a regeneration story at one point, and so it doesn't seem to be talked about. I think it's one of the great books of the BBC range, I'd say. It certainly is very memorable.
Yeah,
it's not kind of like Doctor Who by rote.
Yeah.
By any stretch.
Yeah, I thought it was a good pick. I'm glad I read it.
Yeah, so am I.
Don't know that I like Leela anymore, but
no, but yeah, it was the first novel with her in that I've read, because I think I said last time I'd read a Decalogue story that just utterly failed to capture her. I enjoyed it.
Shall we talk about listener feedback?
Yes, please. Yes.
We don't have any emails this month.
Oh.
Yeah, but please write in, tell us your thoughts. Would love to hear your thoughts on short trips from last month, as well as if you've read this book, what you thought of it and the structure. Did you have any Facebook comments or posts to speak of?
No, alas, no comments or posts. We've had a few likes, so please keep on liking and keep on listening.
We did run a Twitter poll, and we asked, of the following 4 major Doctor Who book ranges and publishers, what was your favorite? And the choices were Target Novelizations, Virgin Publications, so New and Missing Adventures, BBC Books, so Eighth and Past Doctor, or BBC Penguin, so the new series. The new series got 0 votes, so that was interesting.
Not surprised.
The Target Novelizations and the BBC Past Doctor, Eighth Doctor books got 25% each of the vote.
Okay.
And then with a whopping 50%, the Virgin New and Missing Adventures were chosen as the favorite.
Yeah, that feels right.
And the other kind of cool thing, we did get mentioned on This Week in Time Travel, that podcast, in response to their My Doctor Is question. We answered bookish, and you can hear that in podcast 23 on This Week in Time Travel. Yeah. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. I was having my breakfast when I was sort of doing it. I think I actually spat out coffee. So, yes. You caused me to have to mop up after myself. Cool. Yeah, cool. So no communications from any gentleman in lime green reading the Cyberman Sylvester McCoy story?
Sadly not. Yeah.
No. So what are we doing next month?
So next month we are going to be doing something different and new again. But rather than doing an anthology series, I thought, you know what? It's time we read a graphic novel or comic series. So I'm picking Prisoners of Time. Was done by IDW, the last major thing they did before Titan took over the comics license. And it was the 2013 50th anniversary kind of 12-issue maxi event series, as we used to say back in the day. And it was also one of the selections from our listener Thomas a few months back too. So yeah, this will be interesting. It's I'm not sure quite how we're going to review it, because it's...
Well, I mean, you can review. I mean, I think doing a reading from it will be interesting, but I suspect there may be some speaky bits. I'm very much looking forward to it, because I do greatly enjoy Doctor Who comics over the years. I've not read as much of the IW and Titan output. I must confess, those that I have read, I have enjoyed. But I mean, certainly, kind of going back. I mean, I'm one of these people of the opinion that certainly in the 80s, the best 6 Doctor stories were in the comics. Yeah, not that that took much doing. Yeah, I'm looking forward. Is it by Tony Lee? Because he seemed to do pretty much. He seemed to do a lot of IDW stuff.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he wrote all of it, or because I know
Right.
each issue is with a different Doctor and TARDIS team, and they kind of all come together at the end there. So
Okay.
I'm not sure how they did that. So we'll find out.
Yeah, yeah.
So until next month, I've been Matt in Minnesota.
Chris in Savannah. Happy reading.
Thank you for listening to the all-new Adventures of the Doctor Who Book Club podcast. Special thanks to George C. Music for use of their song, Doctor Who Theme, Swing Jazz Version. You can follow us on Twitter at ANDWBC Podcast and like us on Facebook. You can support the show by leaving us a rating and review on iTunes. You can contact the show by emailing your thoughts to andwbcpodcast@gmail.com. And until next month, happy reading.
We're having some shenanigans.
I read most of this book waiting in line for 4 hours for a SNES classic. So I was one of the people reading a Doctor Who book in public this month.
Right. Okay.
I did manage to get my SNES classic, which was good.
Cool. I was at a comics convention a few years ago, and Tony Lee had some kind of disagreement with the convention, and so he was doing his own breakaway convention in a pub just outside. and so people were just kind of coming there and decided just hanging out. He's lovely. Yeah, it was the London Super Comic Con or something. So it was kind of had Stanley and Paul Cornell, and I was slightly more excited about sort of actually getting to meet and speak and hang out with Paul Cornell than I was Stanley. But Tony Lee, no relation, was lovely.
Cool.
Tomorrow I will go and see Leela herself.
Yes.
Which will be good fun. Then Peter Davison and Colin. Tomorrow thing's in a theatre, so it's a versatile enough venue that next Friday they're doing wrestling.
Oh.
Yes.
Well, fun.
Local wrestling rather than sort of,
the WWE stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
I once shared an elevator ride with Louise Jameson, and I didn't say anything to her at the. I think that was at Chicago TARDIS one year.
Okay.
But I figured if I don't have anything nice to say. No, I think she's lovely. I think she's lovely.
Yeah.
Just her character, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, she certainly has come across well. But with Cartmel, it was just kind of, I saved him from somebody who was trying to get him to explain the Cartmel master plan for what's been the zillionth time, and I could just sort of, I could see him kind of like, this is why I don't really do these things these days.
I ran into Andrew Cartmel a couple of times at Gallifrey. He was a early morning swimmer, as was I, so we would both get up and use the pool and swim and do laps and stuff. And then one time Annette Badlin was there, and I didn't realize she was in the pool. And then so like I turn around, and behind me Margaret the Slitheen kind of rises slowly from the water.
God.
Yeah.
I suspect there'll be a fair few Easter eggs and stuff, no pun intended.
That was a good one.